Our speaker is Jim Cathcart. He is a top 1% mentor to experts and entrepreneurs. He's a very famous speaker, as you will see from the brief introduction. We could go on and on. His talk is going to be Going Pro. How much more successful could you become? He is the founder of the Going Pro Experts Academy. He is a Speaker Hall of Fame person. He is in the Sales and Marketing Hall of Fame. He is a best-selling author of 25 books. He is a top 1% TEDx video. He has 2.6 million views of his award-winning video on TEDx. And I told him it's 2.6 million plus one because I watched it early this morning and was very impressed. He is going to share his amazing expertise with us. You're for a real treat. So without any more delay, Jim Cathcart.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Kathy. It's good to be with all of you. One of the things that you've seen in these slides here is that I've got a lot of books that I've written that have been released lately. The one that's most relevant for you is Mentor Minutes, and I'll elaborate on that in a second. It's a 2023 book, and it's how to reach the top 1% of any field you choose. Now, a lot of people say, oh yeah, okay, but look, I'm just trying to get work. Okay, I can certainly identify with that because I have absolutely been there. My wife and I will be celebrating our 53rd wedding anniversary in a few weeks. And when we got married in 1970, I was working at a bank and she was working at the same bank. She was an executive secretary. I was a bill collector in the credit card department. And one of us had to leave and I didn't like my job, so I was the one who left. And I was playing guitar and singing in nightclubs to make money when we first got married, while I was job hunting. And I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I knew I wanted to do something that would allow me to become successful and wealthy. And so I said, well, it's got to be real estate or stocks and bonds or, banking or something like that. But I knew in banking, most bankers don't make much money. Banks make a ton of money. Bankers, the people that work there, not so much. But it was my aspiration to get a job in the trust department that handled wealth management and to move my way up. So we got married. I'm looking for a job. I find one selling mutual funds and life insurance. And I go through the training while I'm still playing and singing in nightclubs. And I complete the training. And for a year and a half, I tried to do that and failed. I didn't make enough money to meet the bills. So I quit, took a job selling cars for a few months, hated that. Got a job from a friend of mine working as a clerk in his dad's grocery store. And while I was there, I sent out a resume, and it must have been a lame resume. This was a long, long time ago, of course. But I sent out a resume to every bank with a trust department in the state of Arkansas and all the neighboring cities around the edges of Arkansas. So I had a stack this high of resumes that I sent out, no cover letter. I was just a stupid, naive kid, right? And of course, I got like 3 replies out of the entire stack. 2 of them said, no thanks. And the other one said, let's talk. And I didn't get that job. So I ended up taking a job as a government clerk, working for the housing authority for $500 a month. Now I got no college degree, no money in the bank, no connections in the community, and I'm newly married and we got a baby at home. And it's 1972. And so I take the job and I'm an assistant to a man who doesn't need help. So I've got 8 hours a day of free time just sitting at my desk. So I was reading books about urban renewal because it was the housing authority. That didn't interest me. So I read the Bible cover to cover at work in 3 months. On the job, I had that much extra time. I did some work, but mostly it was just, championing a desk. And then one day I heard a man on the radio, and what he said changed my life. And I'll get back to that in a minute. But I wanted you to know I've been where you've been. I've been struggling. I've been, you know, unclear on what I wanted to do when I grew up. I've been, I felt defeated and useless and thought, gosh, there's no hope. You know, I've had all those experiences, and I've done everything from drive trucks to shovel gravel and dirt to, um, you name it, all kinds of menial jobs before I finally found my path. Now, as you've heard, I've delivered 3,500 paid speeches all around the world, written 25 books, been president of the National Speakers Association, inducted into all these halls of fame and so forth. Oh my gosh, how's that possible? Because I still don't have an earned college degree. Last year, at age 76, I was 75 at the time. I got an honorary degree from High Point University in North Carolina, but I don't have a college degree. However, I am now a university professor and have been for many years at California Lutheran University in Thousand Oaks, California, and I've written a couple of college textbooks, and I teach in an executive MBA program. So still no college degree earned, but learning, absolutely. I've been a voracious learner ever since I figured out what I wanted to do when I grew up, which was get into the field of human development. Now, let me share with you some thoughts here. From 2015 to 2019, I did a series of lecture tours of mainland China. An agent over there had been following me for a while, and he said, Jim, I want to bring you to China as one of my small group of experts. And he said, I represent not Jack Canfield, Mark Victor Hansen, co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul with Jack Canfield, and Tom Hopkins, sales guru, and Brian Tracy and Bob Proctor and a number of other people. He said, I want you. I said, you only represent 10 people. How come I made the cut? He said, well, it got down to where I needed one because one of my guys retired. And it was going to be either Zig Ziglar or you. And Zig doesn't want to travel anymore. And Zig, as some of you may know, was a famous motivational speaker who was also a friend of mine. He passed away just a few years ago. So I got the nod, and I did 19 separate tours of mainland China over 5 years, 23 major cities, to tens of thousands of young business people in China in forums like you're seeing on the screen, always through an interpreter because I don't speak Mandarin, though I was trying to learn. And at the end of my speeches, every time, people would come up to me and they would say, teacher, how do I become a great speaker? Now, what you're looking at in this photo is a National Speakers Association Cavett Award. Cavett Robert was the founder of the National Speakers Association, and that's a photo of his statue that's given to the member of the year, or, well, the Lifetime Achievement Award, one member per year. And I had the honor of receiving that in 1993. That's me and Bob Pike, who's a training expert. So these people would come to me and they say, teacher, how do I become a great speaker? And I used to give them a long answer. And then I thought, it's more simple than that. How do you become a great speaker? Well, become a great person and then agree to give speeches. Now you might say, well, that's sarcastic and flippant. Well, no, I'm sincere. If you have a speech impediment, you can become a great speaker, assuming you have great knowledge or experience, or you're a great person others would like to learn from. If you're ugly as a mud fence, as we used to say when I was growing up, you can become a great speaker because it's not based on your looks. It's based on what kind of person you are and what kind of message you bring. So how do you become a great whatever? Become a great person. And then whatever skill you've acquired will be magnified by that. Be the person who would attract the results you seek. You can either approach what you seek like an archer, with an arrow where you're shooting at the target, in which case all of the accuracy, all of the aiming, all of the energy, all of the initiative is going to be on you. And I suggest you do that. But you can also become a magnet for what you want. In other words, develop in you the qualities that would make whatever it is you want seek you. Become an eligible receiver. Use a sports metaphor. If you're not downfield and in the open and able to catch the ball pretty well, they're not going to throw the ball to you. So you've got to be an eligible receiver for whatever kind of career or job or life you want to have. So go to work on you while you're going to work on work. Be a magnet. So I went from a guy who had never given a speech, had nothing to say worth paying to hear, had no college degree, no connections in the community, was working as a clerk for the housing authority, to a guy who's speaking for as much as 6 hours a day to thousands upon thousands of people all over the world. How in the world is that possible? And how is that possible for you? Because in grammar school, junior high, and high school, I was not a superior student. I did well in the classes I liked, but overall, I was a D Delta plus student. So, my academic level was out of 430 graduates of my high school class, I was number 176. And I wasn't an athlete. And I didn't have any ends that would get me special privileges. So I did everything the hard way. I worked in warehouses. I did all kinds of things coming up through the ranks. So the world is asking you right now, everywhere you go, whether it's rubbing a bottle and a genie pops out, or answering the phone, or stepping up to the counter at a coffee shop, or sitting on Santa's knee, or knocking on someone's door, or wishing on a star or wishing well, all of them are asking the same question. What do you want? And the problem is most people don't know the answer to that. Think about that for a second. The whole world is asking, what do you want? If you step up to the coffee shop counter and you don't know what you want, not only will the barista be annoyed, the other people will say, hey, excuse me, would you please step aside until you decide? When you answer the phone, you're wondering, who is this and what do they want? And if they don't know, you'll probably hang up on them. Same thing's true everywhere you go. When you go in to interview for a job, when you're talking with someone about the potential of doing some work with them, what they want to know is, who are you? What do you want? And what do you bring? How are we going to be better off by knowing you? They say it's not what you know that counts, it's who. That's incomplete. It's not who you know that counts. It's not what you know that counts. It's not who they know that counts. It's not who knows you that counts. Here's what counts. Who's glad they know you? Let that sink in. Who's glad that they know you? Just, well, nobody's glad they know me. Yeah? Well, you can make them glad. How? How am I going to make somebody glad they know me? Well, it's like Zig Ziglar used to say, you can get everything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want. So what if I don't know what they want? Ask, observe, study people, get in the habit of noticing what other people want. I don't mean want like they want a new car, but what are they, are they looking for attention? Are they looking for a solution? Are they looking for a helping hand? Are they looking for a sympathetic shoulder to cry on? Are they looking for an encourager, someone that says, come on, you can do it. I've seen you in the past do things like this. You can handle this, right? What do they want? And the better you answer that question for yourself and for others, the better everything will go for you. So what if you don't expect much? Well, in 1974, I didn't. That's me. In 1974, I was 52 pounds overweight, smoked 2 packs a day, had never exercised seriously in my life, And I was, as I told you, working as a government clerk. So that was me in 74. What did I expect? I didn't know. I expected an ordinary but unremarkable life. My dad was a telephone repairman. Mom was a homemaker, took care of me and my little sister and my invalid grandfather, who never spoke or moved from his hospital bed in our front room for the last 7 years of his life. And so I expected to just grow up and have an ordinary life, live my 72.x years, and then die and get out of the way. I didn't expect anything to be significant. But a couple of years before this picture was taken, 1972, I was working at the Little Rock Housing Authority, sitting there listening to the radio in the next room, and I heard the voice of Earl Nightingale. Who's Earl Nightingale? The Dean of Personal Motivation. He was on 900 radio stations all over the world at that time. And that day at the Housing Authority, I heard him say, if you'll spend 1 extra hour every day studying your chosen field, not just the field you're in, your chosen field, in 5 years or less, you'll be a national expert on that. That hit me like an oncoming train. That rearranged everything in my belief system because I did the math. An hour a day, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, 5 years, that's 1,250 hours. Well, if you're studying people, that's not going to get you much, although it'll make you pretty knowledgeable about people in general. But if you're studying the behavior of people in a crisis situation, you've narrowed the field from studying people to studying behaviors in a particular niche. And 1,250 hours of studying that, you'll start being quoted in magazines, you'll be interviewed on television shows, you'll be written about in books, and you'll be considered one of the leading authorities in the nation on that particular field. So what field do you want? Well, I didn't know what I wanted. So I'm thinking, real estate or stocks and bonds or something, I told you about my path. So I didn't know. And then it hit me a few weeks later. I want to do what he does. I want to be like Earl Nightingale. I want to become an expert in the field of personal development. So how do you do that? Well, you determine what kind of personal qualities and professional knowledge and experience a person in that field would have. This picture is me, 50 pounds lighter than the previous picture. This one was taken in 1978 in Louisville, Kentucky. And notice what I was talking about that long ago. Become the person who would achieve your goals, and you will attract the goals as your natural byproduct. See, most people tend to work only toward the goal, not so much working on themselves as the person that's trying to achieve it. But if you work on developing the qualities of communication, of self-awareness, of empathy, your ability to communicate with other people, your confidence in making a presentation to a group of people, your ability to do decision-making intelligently, to become a problem solver. When you start developing those qualities, other people will want to be with you. Other people will be glad that they know you. So I studied Earl Nightingale. All right. And Earl Nightingale's on 900 radio stations. And I bought a series of audio cassettes. Remember audio cassettes? Well, Earl Nightingale produced a whole library of these audio cassettes, each about 20 minutes long. And they were bound in a leather-looking folder that had the transcript of it. And the idea was you buy 36 of these for $560. Translation, that's about $3,500 today. And I was making $525 a month. So buying that library of audios was way out of the question for me. But the guy who was selling them said, Jim, if you will listen to these every day for a month, he said, take all 36 home Listen to them every day for a month. At the end of the month, if you don't feel like that's going to change your life, bring them back. If you do feel like they're making a difference for you, figure out how to pay for them. Well, I brought them home and binge listened to all 36 of them. I listened to them maybe 3 times all the way through, all 36, just in a couple of weeks. And at the end of the month, I was getting ready to package them up and take them back. And my wife, Paula, said, "You don't want to take them back, do you?" And I said, "No. What do you think?" She said, "Maybe you should keep them." Now, why would she say that? Because she had seen enough change in me that she didn't want to go back to the old version of me. So I kept those and I worked out a payment plan. And I listened to them fanatically. And I mean fanatical in the dictionary sense of the word, for 5 years. Fanatically, every single day I was listening to those audio recordings for 5 years. And what happened was, at first, not much difference was made, just a little bit difference in my attitude and mood. But after a while, my skills started developing, my personal demeanor changed, my confidence level grew. I got to where I really had thought long and hard about all the things that matter in life, and especially in my life. And I was a different person as a result of that process. And so within 1 year, I got active in the Junior Chamber of Commerce, JC's, which was huge back then. It's pretty much faded away today, but back then it had 350,000 members. I got active, when I say active, 400 meetings after work and on weekends in 2 years. 400 free meetings in 2 years, working on projects, doing everything I could to learn leadership skills and teaching what I had learned from the Nightingale recordings. Then I started reading all the classic books, Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends and Influence People, The Power of Positive Thinking, and so forth. Well, pretty soon I got a job as a trainer teaching other people's courses. And then I went out on my own as a trainer teaching my own courses. And I was teaching a course on personality types called Relationship Strategies for Dealing with the Differences in People. And my business partner was a man I had met in California, a college professor, Dr. Tony Alessandra, who's still my best friend today. But Tony and I threw our assets in together to be business partners. I was in Oklahoma at the time, and then Tony was in California. And I moved to California, and we made a full business out of it for about 5 years. And during that time, I was sitting in the office, the phone rang, and it was Earl Nightingale himself asking to speak to me. He said, "Mr. Cathcart, I read an article of yours that I think would make a good audio program." I said, "On relationship strategies?" He said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, it is an audio program. It's patterned after the ones your company makes." He said, "Well, send it to me. We might publish it." Long story short, Nightingale Conant published Relationship Strategies by me and Tony Alessandra in 1984. And in 1984 and 85, they sold $3.5 million worth of that all around the world. Tony and I went from being virtual nobodies to being world famous and being the first people that ever produced an audio training program on the subject of personality types. Wow. So what do you want? I mean, think about that. That's what happened for me. What's possible for you? What do you want? You might say, "Well, I'm not sure yet." Okay, that's fine, because I went a long time without knowing what I wanted. I was like 26 years old before I figured it out. Daniel Burrus is a friend of mine who's a futurist, wrote The Anticipatory Organization and Flash Foresight and a number of other books. He says, most people don't know what they want because if they don't understand what's possible, they ask for too little. Well, that's probably true for you and me. If we realized what we were really capable of, we'd ask for more from ourselves. So expect a whole lot more. Why? Because what you expect is what you start getting ready for. If you expect the bus is coming at 3 o'clock, at 2:55 or so, you're going to be at the bus stop. If you don't think one is coming, you may not even go near the bus stop all day. So what you expect determines what you get ready for. If you expect that there's going to be a formal event next week, you look at your dress up clothes and make sure they're ready for you to go to a formal event. Otherwise, it just hangs there if you have it, right? So expect more from yourself. Let me ask this question. What is success to you? Because it's different for everybody. Is it money? I guarantee you that's part of it. People say, well, I don't care about money. I just want to help people. Okay. How many people can you help with 19 cents? How many people can you help with $20 million? Yeah, money's part of success, right? So what is success to you? And I think you and I need to have our answers in writing. Because if you don't write it down, you're just having thoughts. It's just fantasy. But if you write it down, it becomes tangible, and all of a sudden you start getting more serious about it. So what is success to you? Is it lifestyle? Climbing mountains, visiting beautiful places, going on exciting tours, playing rock and roll, sailing. What is success to you? How about reaching the top 1% of the field you've chosen? By the way, this is just a handy snapshot. It's a picture of the Board of Advisors for the School of Management of California Lutheran University. So I just threw that in there because it's an example of a lot of people who've achieved a lot of things. But I want you to think about your chosen path. What would be the top 1% of that path? When I joined the JCs, I was one of 356,000 members. And I was new, had never gone to a meeting of that type. I'd never gone to a meeting that wasn't a class. So I was 26 years old approximately, went to a local JC's meeting to help form a new chapter, knew nothing, had no credentials, just ambition. And I decided to get really, really, really serious about the leadership training that was done by the Junior Chamber of Commerce. So I got involved, like I told you, 400 meetings in 2 years. Well, okay, 356,000 members. What's 10% of that? 35,600 members. Okay. What's 10% of that? 3,560. So the top 1% of the USJC's 356,000 members was 3,560, right? What's the top 1% of that? 36. All right. I went from being the brand new member in 1972 with no experience to being the guy at the national headquarters, part of a group of about 100 people at the national headquarters in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in charge of leadership training for all 356,000. And I did it between the years I joined the JCs in 1972, and I was on the national headquarters staff effective August 28th, 1975. So in 3 years, I went from nobody in that organization to the guy in charge of leadership training, one of only about 20 department heads at the national headquarters out of 100 people there. So I was one of 20 out of 356,000. When I say you can reach the top 1% of your field without having extra privileges or any kind of door openers working on your behalf, I'm sincere. I've done the same thing with the National Speakers Association, same thing with my TED Talk, which was just me showing up and doing a talk like 16 other people that day, and yet mine went to 2.6 million views. How do you do these things? Well, it's a knowable and learnable process. But first, you got to answer the question, what do you want? What field do you want to excel in? And what level do you want to aspire to? You want to be competent? That'll get you a job. If you're competent, that means you can do the work. Good. And you'll get paid. But if you're excellent, then you'll get paid more and get more opportunities. And if you decide to take your excellence to the next level and become a true expert in your field, then opportunities start to abound and people start seeking you instead of you asking them if you could help. And beyond expert, if you can become, by recording, documenting what you've done and what you've learned and sharing it and collaborating with others and become a leading authority, become published in your field, then you've got a foundation from which you can build empires. And some people are content to stop at that level. Others want to go for the gusto, get the brass ring, and become a celebrity or even a star. Well, let's examine that little process, because above leading authority, it requires a lot more work. Because you can walk on a flat street with no effort. If it's a hill, it takes a little more effort. If it's a mountain like this one, then you're going to need poles and you're going to need to be careful about every step. Okay? This is a picture of Taylor Swift on her 1989 world tour. Now, 1989 is the year she was born. So it wasn't done back in 89. It was done in 2015. But I want you to look at this. You can see her on stage, and you can see all the, pyrotechnics, and you'd see the thousands and thousands and thousands of people in the audience. How did she become so successful? And look at this. That tour generated $250 million, $250 million in revenue, mobilizing 2,278,000 fans to come out for the concerts. That is serious mega success. Yes? Yeah. George raised his eyebrows. Yeah. Okay. Now, here's the question. How did Taylor Swift become that successful? I would say because she's cute. No? Well, she is attractive, but that's not why she's successful. Because she's a good singer. No, there are lots of good singers that aren't nearly that successful. And she is a good singer. Because she's a good songwriter. Well, the same is true again. Though she is one, there are lots of others who aren't nearly that successful. Why did she become that successful? Because she decided to. The level you aspire to determines how much of the work you're willing to do to get there. So she knew if she was going that big, she was going to have to assemble a team of high-level, committed, talented people who were all in to make this happen. And she was going to have to work herself ragged, doing whatever was necessary to bring about that success. So what level do you aspire to? And let me share quickly my own personal choice on that. When I was not even competent yet in the field of personal development, I aspired to becoming a leading authority in the field like Earl Nightingale. I had no reason to aspire that high. I had no proof that I was capable of getting beyond maybe competent or excellent. But I was committed to doing whatever it took, as long as it took, until ultimately I could achieve it. Because I knew even though I wouldn't necessarily do it alone, I could form the relationships and do the extra work and find the assets and leverage things wisely and ultimately get to that level. Luckily, I was able to do that rather rapidly in my career. So what level do you aspire to, and what is the field you've chosen? You say, well, I'm not sure about my field yet. That's fine. That's fine. Answer this question in writing. What kind of person do you want to be? As a matter of fact, if you get a copy of this book, Mentor Minutes, and you can get it in ebook inexpensively, Well, the book itself's not that expensive. There's an exercise in here called the Future You that leads you through writing down the answers to what kind of person you want to be, what kind of life you want to live, what kind of business experience you want to have, what kind of social network do you want to be connected to, what kind of things do you want to achieve in your life, what kind of legacy do you want to leave, how do you want to be known by others. When you answer that in writing, it gives you a North Star, a guiding light to direct you toward what you want. And it's okay to just aspire to be highly competent at what you do. But it's also okay to go for the gusto and, put your whole life into it and become a celebrity or a star. It's totally up to you. So 2 things to work on. 1, work on your craft. 2, work on the craftsman or craftsperson if it makes you more comfortable, right? Work on you. Now, I put this slide together when I was talking to a group of public speakers. I said, you're not up there alone. Well, the same thing's true for you on the job, any job. You're not there alone. Every one of your clients, meaning the person that receives the fruit of your work, wants you to do well. They're pulling for you, even though they may not like you. They might love you. They may not like you. Doesn't matter. They still want you to do well because they're receiving the fruits of your labor. So be the kind of person they're hoping you are. Because it always comes down to one-to-one. Even if I'm speaking to a group of 10,000, 13,800 was the largest I ever addressed in person, I knew that every one of those 13,000 people was the only one listening. I was the only one they were listening to during my speech. So for me and them, or him or her, it was a one-to-one conversation. And if you keep that in mind, anytime you're talking with a group, it takes the fear out of it and makes it a whole lot more about what you're communicating and less about how good you look when you're doing it. So always think what this means to them is what? How do I explain what this means to you? Okay. That's me at a Toastmasters group a few years ago. I was brought in by a Ventura, California Toastmasters group to address their group. But here's what I do today mostly. I've written these new books. I've formed the Experts Academy so that I can mentor people through the growth process. And I also have, and this is free, and you can tune into it every month on the first Wednesday of the month, Wisdom Parlor. It's a podcast where I talk about things like this. And I have a number of other people who are experts and fascinating people who join me on that podcast. But it's Wisdom Parlor, and there's the what do you call it, URL for it down there on the slide. Now, I'm going to give you all these slides, so I'll just create a PDF of this, and I will send it to Kathy or to Shannon or both, and then they can distribute it to all of you. So don't worry about having to write down these things. Things I want you to write down are what you want, okay? So I lead people through a process I call the Going Pro experience, getting really serious about one aspect of their career or their life. And I'm going to give you a short version of that, okay? First thing I do is I tell them, look at your message or your service. What is it that you provide to other people or want to that's worth paying to receive? If you're giving a speech, then what's the message that's worth paying to hear? If you're building a product, what is the product and how does it help people? Okay. And is it easy to get somewhere else cheaper? Is it so poor quality that nothing else, that it's a worse choice than the other options? Then work on whatever your message or your product is. Second thing, figure out who you want to do business with. Isolate the market you're going after. If it's banking, like it was for me, figure out how bankers think and where they go and what they read and what they care about and how they operate. And then surround them, start showing up everywhere they show up. And then penetrate the bubble. Get one person you can start doing something with, even if you're volunteering. Just get inside the circle and then saturate that whole market with your presence by going from one to another until you've served everybody in that marketplace. And the third thing you need mileage. In other words, experience. You need to be able not just to do the job, but to do it well when the circumstances are awful. It's like lots of people tell me, well, Jim, I want to be a professional speaker like you. So how do I get booked? Well, wait. Are you worth booking? Oh, yeah, I'm an excellent speaker. Are you an excellent speaker when you're in front of 700 people on the third level below the street in a convention hotel and the building catches on fire and you're the only one with a microphone and you've got to evacuate 700 people safely? Are you a good speaker when someone in the audience has a medical emergency right in the middle of your favorite story? Are you a good speaker when the air conditioning goes out and it gets to 108 degrees in the room? Or the heater goes out and it gets to 40 degrees in the room? Are you a good speaker when there's a loud party going on in the next room and you can hear it through the wall? Are you a good speaker when the lights go out and nobody can get out of the room because they can't see enough to even know where to go? So I've had all those circumstances and many, many more. So that's why we need mileage. In other words, experience in the role to develop the confidence, the skill, the savvy to be able to handle the situation well, even when the situation stinks. And all this starts with how you think. Your mindset, the way you look at yourself, at your world, at other people, shows up early. For example, I asked my son, who's an executive in a luxury hotel chain, 25 years experience. About 40 minutes ago, I asked him, what advice would you give these job seekers today? And he sent me a text. And he said, quite literally, be nice to the receptionists and the security people for the building while you're entering, because they give their opinions to the decision makers. Yep. Your mindset shows up in your actions. So if you don't treat people who don't have power very well, rumors will get around and people are going to say, hey, who's the jerk that we're interviewing today? Let's see if we can cancel that, right? So your mindset shows up in your actions, and your actions repeated become your habits. And when other people observe your habits, you develop a reputation. So your reputation is simply the observation of your traditional habit patterns day to day. And your reputation determines who's willing to have a relationship with you and who's not. Because some doors will shut if the reputation's not good, and other doors will open if the reputation is great. And your relationships determine how big the doors to success can be for you. So how do you grow a big success? Grow a great mindset. See, everything in that chain has a domino effect on the other things. So that's why it's so important for us to think about all of those. These two slides, this was presented at a National Speakers Convention, and this comes from the U.S. government's selection process when they're looking at leaders and what they want them to be good at doing, what they want them trained in. And if you notice on the left, it says leading change, leading people, being results driven, and so forth. On the right, it says good at customer service, decisiveness, strategic thinking, vision, developing others, team building. All of these are the things that others are looking for in job candidates. So what's a professional? A professional is one who professes to be committed to a certain standard. They're well educated for their field. Their education is ongoing for their lifetime. They do their work for pay. They do it as a service to other people, and they adhere to a set of ethical standards. What I'm doing in my mentorship now is certifying people at the end of a year as professional experts. So become a magnet for what you want. And here's one way to do that. Look at everything you do and say, how can I make it more valuable to others? How can I be more intentional about the way I do it? How can I become more disciplined in doing it? How can I make sure that I'm accountable not only to myself and the employer, but to everyone I'm serving? Openly, honestly, putting myself on the line for the quality of my work. And how can I be more honorable in everything that I do? See, the purpose of what we do is making life better for people. This is me coaching a young guy named Michael in China who was going to be giving a speech. And he was giving the speech very well. And I saw him do it. And then I said, come here. I have a suggestion. Next time you get up to give your 5-minute speech, do your protocols, bow and introduce yourself and your topic, but then pause and kind of lean on one foot. In other words, just sort of turn slightly sideways and say to the audience, the reason I chose this topic is, and then explain why this topic has meaning to you, and then step back into your speaking posture and finish your speech. When he did that, the audience said, oh my gosh, it transformed our experience, because instead of observing a kid giving a speech, we felt like he was really talking with us. So the purpose of what we do is to make life better for people. I was in Malaysia, and I was leading an academy over there, and a group of people, all of whom spoke Mandarin Chinese, and I don't. There were like, I don't know, maybe 30 of them in the meeting, and about 19 of us went on a tour of a fishing village in Georgetown near Penang, Malaysia, and it's a tourist trap. And we were going through the fishing village, and they had little shops where they sold T-shirts and hats and trinkets and things like that. And they had, seafood that had been caught within the last 2 hours, and you could order it and cook it and eat it right there on the spot. And they had beggars. And there was this one beggar, Halif, the guy you're looking at here, who's sitting in the dirt in an otherwise paved area, leaning back against a post, and he's got an artificial leg. Can you see that one of his pants legs has holes in it? That's his right leg, and his right leg was missing. And so he has an artificial leg. Also has a very large scar on the side of his forehead. So I don't know what his trauma was, but it was severe. And so he sits there every day and he plays this old guitar. And as we were walking by him, I'm, of course, talking through an interpreter, Kitty, to the group of people that are going along with me. And I'm the teacher. So, they're following my example as much as my lessons. And as we went past Halif, I noticed he was singing in English. I said, well, that's cool. And I said, Kitty, hang on a second. And I went back and I put some money in his hat, or his whatever it was that he had for money there beside him. And I said, you speak English? And he said, yes. And I said, do you know any American songs? He said, I know Hotel California. And I said, well, I'm a singer and a guitarist. Could I play it with you? And he said, sure. So I sat down in the dirt. Now the group that's around me goes, oh, no, teacher is touching the unclean man. And I sat down in the dirt. As you can see in the left-hand photo, I'm sitting right there, with my leg up against his. And he hands me the guitar and said, do you want to play? And I said, sure. So, he hands me his guitar. And I start. A dark desert highway, cool wind in my hair. So I played it and sang it, and he was singing with me. Now, I want you to see something truly amazing. While I'm singing and he's singing harmony with me, he's playing drums on his hollow leg. Here's proof.
Oh, Jim, we can't hear it. I think you need to do something on YouTube to make it heard through Zoom.
There you go. So I didn't hear what you just said. What was
We
that?
couldn't hear that if that was something that you were trying to have us hear. I think there's something on Zoom where you have to click. Paul, do you remember on Zoom?
Oh, okay. Well,
Do?
no worries, because you could see, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you got the visual and you saw him playing his leg while he's singing Hotel California. Unbelievable. What a moment. So I'm walking down the street after that, and the group with me is all talking to each other in Chinese. Oh my God, I can't believe that teacher touched the filthy man and sat in the dirt with him and all. And doesn't he realize that this is wrong? Well, of course I didn't. So I stopped and I said, Kitty, gather our group. And so they all came together. And I said, folks, let me ask you a question. Why did I do that? And they said, you like to play guitar and sing. I said, no. Why did I do that? You wanted to be nice to the beggar. No. Every day he comes to this place and he sits in the dirt, probably in pain because he's missing a leg. And it's pretty clear he doesn't have any comforts. And he sits there and he plays an old beat up guitar and he sings in hopes that somebody who's walking by the way, and looking down at him literally and emotionally, attitudinally looking down at him, everyone looking down at him, he's hoping that some of them will feel pity and leave some money. And he hopes to survive the day and get by with enough to go into the next day. Every day. I wanted him to have a moment of feeling like a totally equal and accepted human being with no barrier between him and others. And they all just kind of gasped. And I said, how long do you think he will remember this experience? And Kitty said, probably for the rest of his life. And I said, me too. Every one of us can do that kind of thing every single day in little and large ways. We can make a difference in the world with no money, no skill, no training, no physical ability, not much of anything, just with the intent to make the world a better place. And I think we should. That's how you make people glad that they know you. Now, as I'm wrapping up, I'll take questions in just a moment. But as I'm wrapping up, I'd like you to do something. Give some feedback on this. If you've got a phone handy, scan the QR code and enter the code ACORN. And what it'll do is it'll take you to like 3 or 4 questions. And then when you submit that, it'll give you one of my ebooks that you can download for free. All right. So scan the QR code and then type in ACORN. And then at the end of that, after you've answered a question or two, then hit send. I'll pause for a moment while you do that.
Mr. Cathcart, thank you so much. Hi, I'm Lee Davis. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear you? Okay, great. Thank you. Fantastic. Exhilarating, breathtaking, refreshing. I would love to know, out of curiosity, what is your day in the life for you physically? Because you seem to really have, you're good. I'm going to say you probably eat well. I would love to know, ironically, because this would help us, or help me anyway. Do you get up early? What do you do? When do you rise? When do you meditate?
The answer would be different depending on what decade I'm answering during. you
Yes,
know,
sir.
because when I was in my 30s, at first I was still heavy, and then I started jogging and working out and eating smart, and I lost those 52 pounds. And I've kept most of that off all these years since, 40 plus years since then. Um, and the way I've done that is through mostly jogging and exercise, floor exercise, that kind of thing. But at age 57, I moved to Thousand Oaks, California, which was right there among the Santa Monica Mountains. And I was able to go mountain trail running and hiking 3 days a week with a group of people at sunrise. And we would do a 6 mile round trip in the mountains, which was a heck of a workout. And I dropped about 15 or 20 pounds and went from being just reasonably flexible and fit to being super fit. And by the time I was 62 years old, I was the strongest and fastest I'd ever been in my life. And then I had a fainting spell on one of the hikes, and it turns out I needed a pacemaker. And I thought, oh no, I'm going to have a tube up my nose and walk with a walker. And they said, no, you can run marathons with a pacemaker. You just got an electrical problem in your heart. And so I had a pacemaker installed, although I put it off for 10 months, thinking it would go away if I just worked hard enough. Not true. And went back to it and ended up, just in really great shape. And now I'm 76 years old, and I still exercise regularly and eat. I enjoy what I eat, but I eat wisely. And I live a very active lifestyle, and I'm engaged all the time. I'm online probably 4 or 5 hours a day, and got a ton of friends all over the world. And as you could see, constantly writing new books, right? So that's the drill, Lee. Thanks for the question.